Hello and welcome to this Global Cooperation Update with me, Jonathan Glennie. Well, if you're an interested citizen of the world, you will already have listened to, watched or read a couple of thousand analyses of what we should expect in 2024. And it's unlikely that you'll be filled with joy and excitement. Ongoing conflicts, worrying elections, instability, ongoing crises. As we begin a new year, and I begin this new video and podcast, I want to share with you my secret antidepressant for when I start to worry about the world around me and the state of global cooperation. It's not a drug, and it's not read a poem or look at a nice view. It's very solid analysis. And it's this. Much of the upheaval and instability we see internationally and nationally is a fairly direct consequence of geopolitical shifts in narrative and power that are precisely what many of us have been campaigning for, loosely called development. And these shifts in narrative and power are also the reason why transformational progress is on the cards today, this year and next year, in my view, more so than I've seen in most of my professional career. Is 2024 going to be awful? Well, for quite a lot of people, yes. There's an ongoing debt crisis forcing many governments to pay huge amounts in interest when they should be financing basic health and education. There's ongoing climate change. 2023 was the hottest year on record, and 2024 might be even hotter. There are ongoing conflicts in Israel, Palestine, Ukraine and Sudan, with an inevitable surge in humanitarian need from its already very high levels. My organisation, Global Nation, launched a global solidarity scorecard late last year that showed international cooperation has reduced. A conclusion also drawn by the World Economic Forum last week as they released a global cooperation barometer to leaders gathering at Davos. And the fragility of democracy is a growing theme across the world, especially in Latin America where I live, and of course just north of here in the United States, where we face the very real possibility that an anti-democratic demagogue could retake power, with all the implications that would have for democracy and decency in the US and in the rest of the world. And in fact, the doomsday clock chimed again on Tuesday and unsurprisingly announced that we're at the same place as last year in terms of our nearness to doom. But many of the difficult crises we are facing as a world are probably inevitable consequences of the huge global progress we have made. The rise of the populist right in Europe and the US is scary, yes, but would not be happening were it not for the great progress in living standards and economic power that's taken place over the last few decades. Rising incomes across the world have reduced US and European predominance politically, economically, and militarily. This is most obvious in the stratospheric growth of China, but it's also there in other parts of Asia and in Latin America and in Africa. Poverty persists, of course, but the economic balance is shifting, and that means the power balance is too. The thing is that power is zero-sum. As other parts of the world become more powerful by virtue of this progress, previous empires become less powerful. And the reaction of many to turn to the nativist right is quite predictable. Now, we need to manage this backlash and challenge, and it won't be easy, but our situation today brings opportunities because this power shift that is causing so much stress in geopolitics is also the reason why transformational and structural change is on the cards. When I started working in international campaigns, it was starkly clear that only tweaks were going to be possible. Aid, yes, but only under conditions set by Washington-based institutions. Fair trade a bit, but no significant shift in global rules to govern trade. Debt cancellation, yes, fine, a bit for the very poorest countries, but no change in how decisions about debt are made. Why not? Because the West had the power still, at the turn of the century, to simply say no to rule changes. But there's been a shift. Not just in narrative, important as that is, with anti-racism, decolonization and post-neoliberalism at the heart of the debate in a way that would not have been thinkable a few years ago, but also a shift in actual voice and actual power. So as we look at the year ahead, the constellation of power is different. Nothing about us without us. The G21 meeting in Brazil And by the way, the Global South insisted on having the African Union, not just the European Union, at that particular table, moving it from G20 to G21. The 16th COP on biodiversity in Colombia, the summit of the future in September, the beginnings of discussions around the financing for development process, the IDA replenishment and other replenishments. In all of these settings for global cooperation, actual structural change is on the cards. Global South actors are more insistent than ever on fairness in both process and outcome. Is it assured? No. Will this come with instability? Yes. Will the narrative of post-colonial justice and an end to wealthy countries getting their own way lead to a backlash? Absolutely. But that's an inevitable consequence of the progress we seek. It's impossible to imagine such rebalancing of narrative and power without that kind of backlash. Even the most egregious current failure of the old order, the ongoing massacre in Gaza being carried out by Western-backed Israeli government, contains signs that the sands are shifting. Look at the previously colonized countries, South Africa, Indonesia and others, taking Israel to court. I don't want to minimize the problems the world faces. Of course we are impatient for changes in power structures to happen faster and impatient for justice now. My point is that there are huge transformational changes afoot, and many of the upheavals we are seeing are simply proof of that. Maybe slowly we are winning. I said I'd give you my reason to be cheerful, my secret antidote to pessimism and depression, and I did. It doesn't mean there aren't also reasons to be worried. We're all well aware of them. Nothing is certain, triumph or tragedy. The point is to influence things in the right direction. And that's why I'm neither an optimist, a pessimist, nor a fatalist. I'm an activist. See you next time. Thanks for listening to this Global Cooperation Update. It's available on video, on podcast, and also actually in a written version, which you can find on Medium. And there'll be links to all of those in the description. And do subscribe, of course, to all those things. If you want to learn more about Global Nation, then you'll also find a link somewhere. And watch out for the Spanish version, which is coming along soon.